Hi, Rachel Mead here, President and founder of Enhanced Prep. Thanks so much for joining me today while we take a look at this SAT math question that deals with quadratics. Now, the first thing that I want to point out is this is a grid-in question, so we have no multiple choice answers to choose from, but we have to pay very close attention to what the question is asking us for. We need to recognize when we're working in quadratics, unless we have a perfect square, that we're going to come up with two different solutions. But this question is identifying that it only wants to look at the positive solution. So the first thing I always recommend doing is clearing fractions as quickly as we can. So anytime we have a fraction that equals another fraction, or in this case, a fraction that equals a value, I'm going to put my x over 1 so that I can turn it into a fraction that equals a fraction and come through here and cross multiply. And I need to make sure I'm distributing carefully. So I'm going to write out my steps rather than jumping to my multiplication. This helps cut down on the opportunity to make careless errors. So I'm going to say x times x plus 3 is going to be equal to, in this case, 18 times 1. Now, we're not always going to have that one, so I just get in the habit of writing it there so that I can make sure I'm distributing correctly. So now we're going to get x squared plus 3x when we distribute is equal to 18. I need to get everything over to one side of my equation to set this equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract my 18 from both sides. So I now have x squared plus 3x minus 18 is equal to 0. Now I'm ready to go to my two sets of parentheses in order to factor. Couple big things with factoring to remember. When this sign is negative, it means we must have one plus and one minus, because my only way to get a negative is to multiply a difference of signs here. I know I'm going to have x and x up front. I need two numbers that multiply together. A times b must be 18, and a plus b must be 3. Because this is a positive 3 value right here, I know my bigger number must be the positive one, where my smaller will be the negative. So what quickly comes to my mind here is I'm going to do a 6 and a 3. So we can see that if I were to check by way of FOILing, I'm going to multiply my fronts, which is x times x. I do get x squared. That works. My outside is x times negative 3, so we get a negative 3x. My inside is 6 times x, so we get a positive 6x. And my last is 6 times negative 3. That does indeed give me negative 18. My middle terms do combine to give me my 3x. So I checked and verified that works. Now be careful here. X plus 6 is a factor, but it's not our solutions. So we need to take this a step further. So we know x plus 6 could be 0, in which case I would get x equal to negative 6. That is not a positive solution, so that's not going to work for me. On the other side, we get x minus 3 could be equal to 0, because again, we have to remember these factors multiplied out to be 0. If I add my 3 to both sides here, I do indeed get x equal to 3, and 3 is my positive solution to this question. Make sure you're practicing your factoring and FOILing with your quadratics in order to help speed up these questions. See you soon.